them, but here in this burn center, the only one of its kind in this Donbass, this area of intensely concentrated mines, there are only 2 specialized beds for severely burned patients. There is a catastrophic shortage of modern equipment and medical supplies here. The enterprises of the Donbass are prepared to buy certain equipment for hard currency abroad to help treat these people. The millions of rubles in hard currency, which are earned by these oil and coal workers, are held in Moscow foreign trade bank accounts, and these accounts are frozen because Ukraine and Russia have not yet come to an agreement on this question. I appeal to our presidents, and I repeat that we will be in a catastrophic situation if we don't solve this problem. We ask very much that a part of the hard currency, which now is in the Moscow Foreign Trade Bank, should be spent to purchase equipment which is necessary to provide the equipment to these centers. At the southern borders of the Commonwealth, everything is still constrained, tense. The city of Shusha came under fire, and after an attack by Armenian forces, the Azerbaijani village of Karagaldi was seized. Last night, Khankendi Stepanakert was fired upon. 7 people were killed and 16 wounded. The military procurator of Khankendi and his assistant were critically wounded. The Azerbaijani foreign minister accused Armenia of violating the principle of non-use of force between states and appealed to the world community to take sanctions against Armenia. Russia offered to mediate the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. On February 19th in Moscow, there is proposed to be a meeting of the Armenian and Azerbaijani presidents, according to the Interfax news agency. Itartas news agency reports that 5 international observers visited Nagorno-Karabakh today. They will give their report at the end of the month. Through the Armed Forces Press Center, we were able to contact our correspondent in Khankendi, Mikhail Zotov, by telephone. He said that despite rumors, the military units in this city did not participate in recent events. Other news from the Transcaucasus area: the Supreme Soviet of Northern Ossetia has extended the state of emergency in the capital, Vladikavkaz. The Parliament of Chechnya has decided to accelerate the process of citizenship in Chechnya. To become a citizen of this republic, it is sufficient to make a note in the passport of a former Soviet citizen. The Interfax agency reports today that Chechnya plans to introduce its own currency. At a planned session of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the Russian Federation, the delegates discussed the issues of preparation for the Congress of People's Deputies, the course of economic reform, and several draft laws. The legislation on national autonomy caused controversy. This is the first issue was the definition of national autonomy. Generally, in this legislation, we are trying to resolve one main issue. We are equalizing the status of national autonomous entities, which were previously called autonomous districts and regions. We are equalizing their status. There were various reasons for this. Some districts have started calling themselves republics, and so we are now trying to adopt this law, which will resolve these political issues and pacify these regions. The second issue, and I believe the time will come for this, and we must now decide these issues, that various peoples, regardless of size, which we used to divide between large and small peoples, and in accordance with this gave them autonomous regions or districts. We have to come up with a rational approach to this national structure. More parliamentary news: committees in the Russian parliament are discussing legislation which is eagerly awaited by 22 million peddlers and workers in the consumer goods cooperatives. Now many telegrams are coming into the center of the Republic. These are telegrams addressed to the Supreme Soviet of the Republic. they are filled with requests to protect cooperatives from failure. We have telegrams from Voronezh, from Lipetsk, from Chelyabinsk, and from many other cities. This is one of 79 Russian regional consumer unions in Kaluga. It controls 2,000 shops and cafes in this area, and in each region it has a reprocessing factory and large preparing facilities. The government has not spent 1 kopeck on the construction of these facilities. On the contrary, the consumer unions is paying the government an income tax of 35% from profits. We pay property tax, construction tax, and many other taxes. This is the way it is in the whole country. But if in the state sector production is falling, in this consumer sector, the cooperative sector, it's the other way around. This factory produces Krainska mineral water, which is helpful for diabetics and is even calling up interest from the Americans for cooperation and trade. This cooperative is producing its first produce from these greenhouses, and this factory is producing cheese products. The law on consumer cooperatives, after it is adopted, will save consumer cooperatives from failure, and it's very important that it should legally protect the property of cooperative members. Information without commentary. The Russian president's press secretary, Pavel Vashanov, has resigned in order to return to journalism. The press service of the Russian president denied rumors that Vashanov had resigned because of political disagreements with President Yeltsin. Brain drain and the reduction in scientific research in Russia are inevitable. This pessimistic conclusion was made today at the Conference on Brain Drain in Modern Russia. The Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the Russian Federation supports the initiative to create in Omsk an Azov German National District. KGB archives contain no information on U.S. military personnel in the Soviet Union. This was the report today made by the Russian security minister at a meeting with a U.S. Senate delegation. Today in Latvia, no newspapers appeared. This protest, called No Press Week, is being carried out by the Editors Association of Latvia. It is brought about by the catastrophic paper shortage in Latvia. Reserves are almost gone, and a ton of paper now costs up to 25,000 rubles. If within the next 2 weeks a temporary solution is not found, the Latvian press will die, according to the declaration of the Latvian Editors Association. One more piece of bad news. Moscow has received a list of new free prices from Riga. The newspaper Izvestia will now be sold for 4 rubles 60 kopecks, Komsomolskaya Pravda for 3 rubles 50 kopecks, and the magazine Ogonyok for 12 rubles. Therefore, only 100 copies will be released for sale each day. Harmful to the health. A protest with this unusual name was begun today by the newspaper Moscow Pravda. Our program has decided to support it. Here is our first report on this topic. On the streets around every Moscow metro station, there is a lot of produce for sale and at lower prices than at the marketplaces. But an analysis conducted by the Moscow Pravda newspaper says that these products are filled with staphylococcus and other harmful bacteria. At the market, there's less risk, but prohibitive prices, and the buyers even there do not believe the sellers follow strictly all the health regulations. But this street buying is the only possibility for people to get anything they need, and the only way to test its purity is to take a look in the eye of the seller as you ask him whether the fish has been poisoned with chemicals or whether it died after a long illness, not after a long illness, but under the butcher's knife. Our correspondent has just prepared for broadcast a report on the Russian-American negotiations. The negotiations between President Yeltsin and U.S. Secretary of State James Baker lasted for over 3 hours in the Kremlin today. They met first one-on-one and then with the participation of experts. They discussed the issues raised in Camp David on reducing strategic nuclear weapons, the earlier arms control initiatives made by the presidents. They also discussed the security of nuclear weapons, the course of economic reform in Russia, and the Minsk meeting of the CIS heads of state. Immediately after their negotiations, they held a joint press conference. Expressing satisfaction with the meeting, the head of the Russian state said, "We truly touched on a very wide spectrum of issues in continuation of that which we agreed on at Camp David, and we made the next steps on all these